Before we begin our lesson, let's set up our journal. Make sure you add this this entry to your table of contents. 1116 entry model fossil observations on page 19. The next picture will show you a setup of page 19. You have 1 minute to add page 19. Good morning, fourth grade. So over the past week, we have been learning about fossils and how fossils are able to tell us about about the Earth's past. We have also learned that a fossil is a rock that has built up with layers over time with an outline of an organism, whether it is an animal or a plant. Fossils are from millions of years ago, and throughout the years, they through pressure that they face building up, these outlines are able to harden into rocks. And today, geologists and paleontologists, while they are examining the earth and trying to find out more about the earth, they find rocks with fossils. These rocks have an imprint or an outline of either a plant, an animal. We also learned that there are many different types of fossils. For example, there is petrified wood, which is wood that has been over the time has been turned into stone. There are also preserved remains, which is when an organism, like a plant or an animal, gets into a glacier or into tree sap, and it hardens, and you can see most of the organism. And then there's also imprints and molds and casts. Today we are going to complete a science experiment. I'm going to use some clay to create a mold. We're going to have these different types of shells to create an imprint, and we're going to see what happens when we leave the imprint of a organism in our clay and see if we can build our fossil. Before we begin our fossil making, I want you to take out your journal, and we are going to take down some observations of the different organisms that we have present. I want you to open up your journal to page 19. On page 19, you have set up 4 boxes. These 4 boxes are the boxes that you will write you're going to write the observations for our different organisms that I have collected. I have collected these 4 different shells. They are different sizes. They are different colors and feel differently. I'm going to show you them one by one, and we are going to write our observations in our notebook. We are going to write our observations in our notebook. I'm going to start out with shell number 1. The observation for this shell goes in box number 1. First shell is a small, kind of yellow whitish shell. It has a bit. It's very smooth. When I feel it, it's very soft. If I turn it around, it has the opening in the middle. It's kind of the opening is very bumpy. Put it up closer. It's kind of like a little hill. It's flat, but then it goes up in this middle part. It has like a bit of a blackish brown color. So this is shell number 1. Let's move on to organism 2. Now this is shell number 2. This looks different than shell number 1. It is much bigger. It kind of is built up like in circles, kind of wraps around. Now this one does feel very smooth. It has a very different design with tan and like white different lines going through it. If you turn it around, there is a little hole in there, which I am assuming is where an animal can hide and will hide and lives. If you notice any other observations that I may have not noticed, feel free to add them in box number 2. This is shell number 2. Now let's add our observations for organism 3. Now I have shell number 3. Shell number 3, it seems like it is like it does have like a tan color, but most of the color in the outline is like black. It has a couple of lines of like a pattern of like tan black. This shell is not as smooth as our first 2 shells. I don't know if you can hear, but like you can hear how I rake my fingers through it. You can hear the different ridges. It is much bigger than shell number 1 and 2. And then if I turn it around, I can see the inside of it. And in the inside, it's mostly like a blackish brownish color. We will now add our observations for shell number 4. Now I have shell number 4. Shell number 4, it has a lot of different bumps to it. It's like it's kind of like a pattern. I noticed that like one line is smooth, the next line is like kind of bumpy with like little like small little pointy mountains. The color of it is like a tannish, whitish. It's like a tan. It's a pattern of tan and white. If I turn it around, it does have an inside, which I believe this is where an animal can hide and live. Again, if you notice anything else that I didn't mention, go ahead, add it into your observation. These are your observations for your science journal. So we have shell number 1. We have shell number 2. We have shell number 3 and shell number 4. So these are the 4 shells, organisms, that we are going to use to make our fossils. So to make our fossils, I have 4 cups here. Each cup is going to, I have 4 cups, and then I have 4 balls of clay. Each cup is going to have some clay at the bottom. Each ball of clay is going to represent 1 layer of sediment in the bottom of, at the very bottom of our earth. So we're going to place each ball of clay in each cup. But before we do that, I'm going to label each cup with a number 1 through 4 so that I know which shell organism is in each cup. So this is going to be cup 1. I'm going to write up 1 right up front. 1. 2. 3. And 4. Okay, so to make our first layer of sediment in our cup, I'm going to take the first ball and I'm going to put it inside the cup. I'm just going to smush it down so it's nice and so it's flat. So it is flat just like that. I'm going to take my shell number 1 and I'm going to place it right there, kind of to make an outline of my shell. I'm gonna press down to make sure that all the details of the shell is captured. So while I wait for that to finish, I'm going to do the same thing to all of my cups with my organisms and my sediment. Different shells represent organisms that have died, decomposed, but were buried in sediment. They were buried in sediment and left a space in the sediment, and over millions of years we're going to see what happens. My next shell in. Now notice, I'm going to show something really quick. This shell is very big. So it is possible that the mold may, that the fossil may not capture all of its detail. So I'm going to press it down, okay? And then the next one, press it down so that it's nice and flat. I'm going to take shell number 4 and put it in. Let's see if the sediment is able to capture the whole organism. Okay, so here we have our 4 cups full of sediment and an organism shell, and we are now going to see what happens when another layer of sediment is added on top, and what happens and what is created. But before we do that, I want to show you how the inside of each cup looks. So this is cup 1 with the with our first shell. Let me see. There we go. See how the shell is sitting in the middle? Now I have cup 2 with our second shell. This is cup 3. And then this is cup 4. Each of these different cups have a different organism, a shell inside of them. Each of these different shells created a different imprint in the sediment, making the mold look different. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to take the shell out to show you what the mold looks like. Start with cup 1. There we go. So that are mold in there, no longer are sediment straight, but it kind of has this dent that is the shape of this shell. That's 1. I will now show you cup 2. This is the shape that shell 2 created in our cup 2 sediment. Remember, shell 2 was placed face with this part down. So the little hollow part, little hole part can be seen right there. Oh, almost dropped it. Back here. So this is sediment cup 3. I'm going to take off the shell. You can't see it, there are little ridges. See how those little lines that resemble to shell 3. And now we have sediment 4. That is the imprint that was created by our organism 4. So now what we are going to do, I'm going to put these shells to the side. I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. We are going to create another layer of sediment to add it on top. And then we are going to let them sit. When this layer of sediment hardens, we're going to take a look at it and see what fossils are created. I have the second layer of sediment. We have taken out the shells and we're going to add them on top of our first layer of sediment. And here we go. Okay. And so that's our first one. We put in our first layer and do our second layer for the third rock. And the last, or in our third sediment, we're going to add the second layer. Now that we added our second layer of sediment to our organisms, we now have to wait 1,000,000 years or just some time until both sediments have hardened, and we are going to, when both sediments have hardened and they are ready, we're going to be geologists, and we are going to break apart the rock and see what we can discover. We won't be able to see our results until at least 2 days. We will get to discover what each organism created. Before we go, I want you to make a prediction. In each box, box 1, box 2, box 3, and box 4, I want you to make a prediction and write one sentence of what you think the fossil for each different organism, what do you think it will look like? Will we be able to see the color? Will we be able to see the shape? Will we be able to see the entire organism? Write me one sentence of what you think our fossils will look like.